Well, folks, we're back. Thank you for your patience. We had a small issue with Zoom and Inventive, and so we had to actually change our Zoom IDs again. But thank you for staying with us. I hope you guys absolutely loved Nasir as much as I did. And with us today both is the director of the film, Arun Karthik. I am Rati Apana. I'm the executive director of the Indian Film Festival. And we have Arun Karthik, the director, with us, as well as Santosh Govindaraju, who is a producer in the Hollywood space, who's going to be interviewing Arun Karthik. So let me just start by saying a few words about both of them, introducing them to you. Arun Karthik is an independent filmmaker, very young. He's just 28 years old, and he began producing and directing films at a very early age of 17. He did a couple of short films called The Backwater and Transcendence. Then he did a debut. His debut film was Shiva Purnam in 2016. Again, a Tamil language film that premiered in at IFFR, which is the International Film Festival of Rotterdam. And Nasir is his second feature film, and this feature film was supported by the Hubert Bals Fund and had its world premiere again in Rotterdam. Nasir has done excellent in many of the film festivals, winning many nominations and awards. And so here we are with Arun Karthik, and he's going to tell us the story behind the story, because the whole idea for us to be here is to peel back the layers and try and figure out what indeed was the story behind the story, because this film had a lot of visual grammar and in its ordinariness, it really gripped us. So we're here to find out from Arun Karthik. And with us to interview Arun Karthik is Santosh Govindaraju. He's a co-founder of Curiosity Entertainment. He's an executive producer and a producer of films like The Night Clerk, starring Ana de Armas and Ty Sheridan, Inheritance, starring Lily Collins, we all love her, and The Card Counter, starring William Dafoe and Oscar Isaac. So he's worked in the Hollywood space. He's also done Love Weddings and Other Disasters with Diane Keaton, and Lady of the Manor, starring Justin Long and Ryan Philippe. So he comes to us with a lot of experience, and I'm so glad that both the creatives got to talk to each other while we were waiting for Zoom to come along. And so with that, I'm going to give it up to both Arun and to Santosh to continue the conversation. And thank you guys for being with us. Welcome,
Hello,
welcome,
everyone, and thank you, Rati.
Arun. Welcome, Santosh.
Thank you. Well, Arun, thank you for being here. And a lot of questions from this film. To begin, many of us are familiar with, the Hindu-Muslim tensions, and they vary decade by decade. Can you help us give some background on what may have inspired, where was inspiration for this film? Was it any particular incident in any particular decade that led to your inspiration for this film?
Yeah, so this film is actually an adaptation of a short story in Tamil. So I had read the short story in 2013, and right when I read it, the main protagonist, kind of struck me, the way the character was written and the way, as a reader, I perceived the character and everything. But of course, by then we were all aware of especially me, of the history of my place. Coimbatore had a violent communal riot in 1998, where a lot of people were hacked to death, and there were bomb blasts and public rioting and all of that. And for about a decade or so, not many of those incidents were repeated. But in other parts of India, in recent years, there were a lot of communal riots that were happening. But then there was this particular incident in 2016 in my city, Coimbatore, where after finishing my first debut feature, I had pretty much nothing to do. So I fancied being an entrepreneur. So I started a small kiosk to sell filter coffee and sugarcane juice. So that lasted only for about 3 weeks, because on this fine day, the group of mobsters, I don't know how else to call them, a group of rioters just stormed the streets and they started breaking down shops on either sides of the road. These were the right-wing Hindutva people, because a certain Hindutva man was killed the previous night, and immediately everybody uh, doubted that it could be the Muslims. So they started breaking down shops, and they broke down all kinds of shops that belongs to all kinds of communities. So my small kiosk was also one of the shops that was destroyed. And having seen this intense riot in front of me, that kind of told me that I should be reflecting on this. And on the next few days, I was only thinking about the short story that I had read a few years back. So I thought, okay, this is a sign. And also by then, the Hindutva government had taken power in India, and a lot of incidents such as that was happening around India. So I thought this would be a very poignant and timely story to tell. So I started working on that film from
Are you
then.
finding incidents, the tension is still high today?
Yes, certainly, because the central government that is in power is not doing much to, you know, s- kind of subside the tension. It's only being fueled as we speak, because there's numerous incidents even now of this growing communal tension between these communities. In fact, with the recent, if you had followed the Babar Masjid verdicts and,
Yeah.
and several other things, there is no balance. It's heavily one-sided.
Right. And I'm asking these questions because we have a broad audience, and I want to make sure that they get as much background as well. You do a beautiful job in the beginning, exposing the family and setting the tone, especially with the morning call to action, with the music, and we get introduced to various family members. I myself didn't realize that what's the Iqbal was the nephew, and can you tell us a little bit of background as to the roles of it's a sister's son? Is it a sister's?
Yeah.
His sister's
Yeah.
son, right? The sister and the
Yeah.
brother-in-law, and the wife having to leave out of town. How did those play into building this character in your eyes?
So what I liked about the story, even when I had read or when I wanted to make it, the one thing that was particularly striking to me was the inherent form in the story. The story had at a beginning that the story began that particular morning and it ended that particular night. So I liked this form that was there in the story, and I just wanted to follow this form, because this form was also telling us something, because it's one particular day and I cannot possibly break that. So in the actual short story, the wife had already left for the relative's place. The wife is not in the house.
Oh,
So
okay.
I thought that would not be as interesting, because I want to also talk about the relationship between this man and this woman. So the wife has to be present in the house. So I made a small variation that she would be present, and then she would leave to her relative's place. She's going to help her relatives in their wedding actually. And also the short story kind of exposes the fact that the boy is a nephew, and the boy's parents, that is Nasir's sister and sister-in-law, and his brother-in-law, were all killed in a bus accident. So that comes as a detail in the short story, but I didn't want to reveal that in the very beginning. So I put it in one of the voiceovers when Nazir is talking about his family and what he's planning to do in the next few weeks and all of that. It's kind of give a hint as to what is this boy, or what happened to him or something. So and a lot of elements in the short stories in the short story kind of helped me to build the character. In fact, the character was already built. My job was actually to kind of visually create the inner world of Nasir.
Yeah.
So the physical world was already there in Coimbatore, and
Yeah. And we see his sweetness, his loving nature, which is fantastic, makes us love him. One question I have is, in many of these movies I see, the lead characters are always smoking. In your eyes, what do you think the smoking has to do with the character build? Because in this particular case, even in the summary, he talks about how he smokes 10 cigarettes a day, 10 BDs a day. Why do you think that's important in the character?
yeah, I think the sweetness of the character goes back to the writer himself. The writer is a very sweet person. He was somebody who did not have an education, a school education. He worked in shops like how Nasir does. He was right from his childhood. He was working in shops and all of that. So he saw a lot of his co-workers who were all the time smoking BDs, and this story itself is inspired from one of his co-workers who
Okay.
passed away in the '98 riot that I was mentioning earlier. So
Okay.
one of the striking details in the short story for me was how orderly this person's life was, which meant that there were precise descriptions on how many cigarettes that he'd smoke. In fact, 4 cigarettes, 4 BDs, that is the local cigarette we call as BD,
Yeah.
4 BDs inside the shop, and 4 BDs outside, and 2 in their home. So I thought this is interesting. Why would a writer choose to tell the reader about how many smokes the character has? Because I think that is in a certain way that you're letting the character be I mean, he in his very ordered life, he gets only few minutes of time for his own, and like to have a smoke or to listen to a song of his own. And I think these are very important moments for the character, because you don't always have to see the character in dramatic action. Smoking a cigarette and just sitting by himself for a few seconds is also for me a very dignified moment, that you make the audience participate in his a bit of his private siesta, or his
Sure.
personal space, which is interesting as well.
So the in the store, we see a bit of harmony between the Hindus in the store, even the compassion where the store owner gives him the suit jackets to keep the cash to pay for his expenses. Does that represent the relative harmony that exists amongst the general Hindus and Muslims, or was there something
There
else
is
going on
certainly a lot of harmony. There is definitely a lot of harmony, not to because India is a huge country, and the Hindu population and the Muslim population itself is huge. So, I mean, the only thing that has been keeping us going for so long is the harmony, whether it is inside spaces like shops or offices where they work together. But usually the problem is created by either politically and ideologically motivated outfits, in this. And coming back to your question, in the shop, if you see, there is a certain dialogue where uh, one of Nasir's colleagues tells that he kind of provokes a riot. He's talking to somebody on the phone, and he tells them to throw stones at their houses and all that. And Nasir knows that the people who he works with, not all of them share like harmonial sentiments with other communities. Of course, maybe the cashier and his colleagues are Hindutva right-wing people in themselves, but there is a certain way to how business is done, right? If 4 or 5 people are working in a shop, beyond your differences, you try to put business ahead, you try to put your everyday livelihood ahead. And these are also smart people. They can't on an everyday basis go on quarreling about their differences, even though they know that we have certain differences of opinion, we are from different communities, and they make it a point to poke each other. They make sure that they maintain a certain kind of harmony, so that everyday work functions. And so
Yeah.
I also wanted to reflect that. That is why I wanted to give that one particular moment to the colleague, where he talks about being involved in a Hindutva riot. Because even
Yeah.
the cashier, he wants to mince more out of Nasir. He wants to squeeze him as much as possible. But at the same time, he knows that out of all his employees, Nasir is a decent man, and he doesn't go and ask him for money all the time. And when he asks it, he means it. He needs it. So he finds a way to help him out. So this give and take is definitely there.
That was very beautiful, and how all the other employees look up to him, and they call him Bhai, so so they treat him or respect him like a brother.
Yes, and it's also a very common lingo that we use in South India, maybe other parts of India also, that we address a Muslim person as bhai.
Oh, okay, sorry. I was looking at the respectful way
Yeah,
among,
maybe because of that. If you go back to why other communities called Muslim people as bhai, because Islam was always more about brotherhood and such things. So they probably coined the term bhai more
I
aptly
didn't,
for.
okay, I didn't realize that. Like in Gujarati culture, they call each other Bhai in a respectful way to Hindus amongst family members or elders. So, but here in this context, it's acknowledging his
It
the
means a Muslim person. Yeah. In
ah,
Tamil Nadu, if you come and call somebody bhai, it totally means that the other person is Muslim. Yeah.
okay, good to know. Um, and then one of the things as producers of films, we test different endings. In this one, he dies because that's what happened to the actual character. Um,
Yeah.
did you ever consider testing a different ending where he might survive?
Well, we did think about it, but never for a longer moment, because every time I think about what if he survives, you go back to the social truth. Because the very point of making this film is how such people are being, unplugged from their lives. How I mean, which is why I find this violence is very violent, because without any without any warning or without any precedence. These guys are just, like, I mean, even if this happens to animals, it's bad, right? And for a human to just go off like that, that makes it heart wrenching, in terms of the social truth. That is what has been happening around the country. So maybe if I make the character survive, I don't know if it would make a better film or a worse film. I don't know about that. But the point of making this film was to adhere to what is happening around India. If you look at right from 2014, there have been more than 80 to 90 public lynchings in the country. So for me to get over that fact, and just for the sake of ending the film in a probably nicer way or in a sweeter way, I think that would have defied the purpose of even making the film. But maybe we in fact, after the post production, my cinematographer brought this up, that maybe Nasir was injured. You still get the point across, and yet we could make him kind of survive. But we thought about it for a while, and we still felt that no, that would make me uncomfortable to think of the film that way, because you always think about all the people who lost their lives in such public lynchings and all that, and for you to make a film which did not talk about that and just touched about that would not be.
Now, I have one last question. With Hindu sensitivity, in the manner in which Nasir is garlanding and cleaning the deities, was he doing it in the proper way, or I didn't know when he was using the little duster if that was proper or not. Were you thinking how?
I think that is very common, even for a religious, pious Hindu man. He would still dust the statue like that, because
thing.
it's just about a worker who's trying to clean his workplace. So even if he was Hindu or Muslim or Christian, I think they would still, because there's a lot of dust. You can't be slowly doing it just because it's a god statue. They just want to like do it and get it over with. Yeah.
I don't know. But now, were there any sensitivities to a Muslim person doing that?
No. I think even when a lot of Muslim people, when they watched it, they kind of related to it as a kind of an everyday thing, that if a Muslim man has to work in a Hindu place or somewhere, they're okay. I mean, nobody's forcing him to clean, but it is Nasir's job to like set up the shop. So it's part of his everyday, and he's like okay with it, and people kind of relate to this reality. Yeah, it's okay for a worker like this to put garlands to Hindu icons and gods and all that.
Okay.
So far, no, none of the Muslim people have kind of objected to it or taken it in the wrong side.
How about the Hindus too? How about the Hindus?
Yeah, even them, I think. I think that was one thing, that the way we handled this character and made him kind of real and relatable and ordinary, people were able to kind of see that he's just another man like us. I have, or many of us would have done that too, if there was a Jesus statue in a house and all that. If you have to clean it, you clean it. It's just a very ordinary thing to do, unless you kind of motivate that action. If we had motivated the action of him cleaning as if it's a very dramatic thing and all that, then probably it would have been looked at from different
Sure, yeah. Now, these are all things we consider when we're producing movies, about audience reactions and thoughts.
Yeah.
And so we have to ask all these questions when we're producing things, that it's identifying the things that we don't know the answers to and asking those questions. So I don't have any other questions myself. I'm looking to see, I don't see other questions in the Q&A.
I do see some. May I read them out?
I asked those questions already.
Oh, you did. Okay,
I did. I asked about whether it's prevailing present day sentiments.
Yes.
And the answer was that, because of the more right-focused nature of the central government, these tensions still exist today. And that there are lynchings, I think you said about 12 lynchings per year, per annum, that continue, right?
No, much more. Yeah.
Oh, sorry. So,
and there was one more question, and the question was, what are you planning in the future? Obviously,
Well, I am here.
Equal to Nasir, but what are you planning in the future? And that came to me on my phone. Sorry.
Okay. So I am from this village called Tadagam in Tamil Nadu, in the state of Tamil Nadu, and in the city of Coimbatore, which is where Nasir was shot. Nasir was shot in the heart of the city, but I live 20 kilometers outside the city. So you see all this background near me. I am right now in the mountains, staying in a farmhouse, writing my next film. So I'm going to shoot the film in this particular place. I mean, it's still my city, but it's not the urban part of the city. It's the border, the mountain parts of the district. So I like to make films about spaces that I can participate and I know, because all my first feature and Nasir. In fact, one other thing that worked for us in Nasir was every space that you see in the film are spaces that I've already been to or I've had like very close association with, because the school that you see in the film is the school that I studied. The
Yeah.
shops that you see, yeah, it was also the school that the original writer of the story studied. And the shops and the streets, all of them are something that right from childhood we've been passing with my mother to buy clothes and all that. So I know the city quite well. And I also spent 2 years in the Muslim neighborhood. When I told you about the riot and my decision to make the film, the next week itself I took up a house in the Muslim colony. So it's a completely a Muslim ghetto. So I kind of somehow convinced the landlady to give me a small house there. So it's just a house which was on the first floor. And for everyday water usage and all, you have to take water. You have to pump water on the streets with all other women, Muslim women standing. And so I like that because it helps me on an everyday process to work from that particular landscape. Wherever I want to shoot the film, I make sure to move there and kind of live there for a while, write the script and dialogue. So that's what I'm doing right now. So came to this farmhouse. I'm every day moving around this place, meeting like a lot of interesting and crazy people. So that gives me also ideas. So that kind of makes me relate to the characters and how these characters would talk or how it would play out and what kind of moods we want. And so the next film I'm going to make is a kind of a village drama that is set in this mountainscape. Yeah.
Oh, great.
Oh, wow. Wouldn't you say, Santosh, that he has a very vivid imagination?
Yeah,
Basically.
I love the getting into it, living it. So it makes you a better director, so.
I hope that.
Yeah. Go ahead, Santosh.
No, that's it. Those are all my questions. Oh, there's a question here. How did you get inspiration to get into filmmaking at such an early age?
So until I was in class 11 or 12, I was not a film cinephile or I was not interested in films as such. I was a bookworm. My mom was a teacher and she always made me read and more of academic stuff and sometimes some nice stories and novels. So to just break out from this boredom of reading academic stuff, I started watching films. So somehow on a newspaper there was this particular article about this film society screening, and I thought, okay, let me go and check it out. So I went to the film society when I was in class 12, and they were watching this Italian film called Eight and a Half. And I understood nothing. I came out and I was making fun of these people, a bunch of oldies sitting and watching some black and white stuff and all that. And for the next week, I was only thinking about a couple of sequences from the film, Marcello Mastroianni, like flying in the traffic and all that. I was thinking I thought I didn't understand the film and why am I thinking about some images. So I went back to the film society secretary and asked him like what is happening, and he told like you don't have to understand a film, you need to feel a film, and it looks like you felt something about the film. Please watch these films, and he gave me few films, and I started watching those films. And after class 12, there is a huge break before you can go to college. So in that 2 months break, I'd seen so much films, like 3 films, 4 films a day, and I thought, okay, this is what I want to do, because I was born and brought up in a village with a lot of adventurous kind of lifestyle, and I was always wanting to do something that has a bit of adventure. And in those 3-4 months, when I saw like all these different kinds of lifestyles and story told in such different methods, and I thought, okay, visual storytelling would be a very adventurous thing to do. So when I enrolled for first year college itself, I told myself that, okay, this is what I need to do. I need to tell stories. I need to make films. So I went online and studied, read books, and whatever films that I would watch, I'd go back to the director, read about the directors and his interviews, and watch other films and all that. So that kind of brought me into the filmmaking zone when I started making short films right when I enrolled in college, and I started rolling like that.
That's fantastic. That is great. So,
but yeah, certainly a lot of American films, and I like this director called Holy Cow. She made First Cow. No, suddenly I'm forgetting her name.
Yes.
First Cow.
let's see.
She's an American filmmaker that I look up to a lot. She inspires me a lot. I can't recollect her name now.
Let me see if I can find it.
Yeah, Meeks Creek and
It was just released last year.
Kelly Reichardt. Yeah, I remembered her name. a lot of independent filmmakers around the world, I keep following their works and keep reading their process and how they work, and that kind of gives a lot of confidence that yeah, it is possible to do such things. Because when I wanted to make films, or when I decided that I'd make films, everybody that I spoke with, they told me that you can't make the kind of films that you're imagining. We are from a different kind of an industry, and you have to go and work in the industry and make films that suits the industry. But when I keep watching films from all over the world, and this filmmaker Kelly Reichardt, she just blows your mind, like about how to kind of make other people feel life. So it kind of starts from there. For me, every time before making a film, I kind of try to ask the question, like, why should I show this life? What is my relation to this particular life? And so I see filmmaking as a way of kind of communicating life to people, telling life.
Now, how
Of
did you
course,
connect?
everything is life, but life as we relate it.
Yeah. How did you connect with this organization that provided you the funding and sponsorship for this film?
So after the debut film that I made was screened in Rotterdam Film Festival in the Bright Future program. So they have this Hubert Ball's grant for script and project development. So I got to know about it from their website, and I applied for it. And luckily, I kind of got the grant, and that grant was for writing the screenplay. It's about 10,000 euros to finish the screenplay. So and with that money only, I took up a house in that location. I stayed there for a couple of years and finished the screenplay and the pre-production and all that. And once the pre-production and the screenplay was finished, they invited us to pitch in several forums in Netherlands, in different cities and all that. So when we pitched there, we reached a lot of Dutch producers, German producers. They reached out to us, and one particular company was very interested in us, and they liked our story and our script and all that. So they wanted to apply to whatever funds that were possible to apply from their end. So they applied for this Hubert Balls and Netherlands Film Fund grant, which was around 50,000 euros. So we got 50,000 euros from Netherlands to spend on the post production and all that. So we went to the Netherlands to do the sound design and color correction and the final deliverables, and we spent the money there.
No.
And also the major part of the money is from private equity from 5 Indian companies, and the sixth company was the Dutch company. So we had to spend the money in Netherlands. So the production was funded by the Indian companies.
Okay.
Fabulous, yeah.
That was really nice of Hubert Balls to support, because the support came at an exact time when I was actually clueless and struggling how to move forward. Because the first film I had made, it did not have as much dialogues. It was almost a silent film. Of course, there's sound and music and all that, but it's a film that is really tough to even release or show it around festivals, because it's kind of a niche film and a kind of experimental in a way. So we didn't make any money. I mean, I made that film for about $20,000, the first debut film, and we literally did not make any money out of it. So I was waiting for a year or two, just doing my writing and making some short documentaries and all of that of my own. So I made it a point not to work in advertising or any other jobs that would make me, unnecessarily expose or sell myself. I'm very particular about why we should shoot something, or what does the frame mean, why one must tell stories and all that. So I found it very difficult to get going, because there's not much income. I made one debut feature, and what do I do? And that is how I started that small kiosk, and whole drama, that it led me to the other film.
It led to a different film altogether. Yeah. I
But
mean,
now I'd say I'm relatively more confident, and I think that, I mean, even if I don't earn money, I've made sure that I do something on the something that can keep me going. Like I take classes for beginners in cinema in some places, and that kind of, I also try to live a modest life, so that I don't have to work in advertising or any other things that I don't believe in, basically. So
that's wonderful. It's just watching this film, I just thought maybe I'll make a comment. It was like it was such a powerful ode, I think, to this ordinary man, and you really transformed him into someone that we could all empathize with in such a big way. And I think it was done in such a clever manner. I loved the photography in the film as well, and I think
a lot of credit to the cinematographer, the writer, and the editor. So all three of us were having constant conversations about why we should tell this person's story and how we should tell this person's story, because the original short story was written in second person narrative, so it's quite uncommon, because most stories are written either in first person or third person. And second person, what it does is when you read, it immediately puts you into the shoes of the character. So the first line is like, you are as of yet sleeping, the time is 6:03, your wife is in the kitchen, and all that. So the reader becomes the character himself. So how do you do it in a film form? You can't shoot the whole film in a point of view, POV kind of a camera angle. So how do you bring this feeling of the second person? So a lot of conversations with my late editor, he's no more, but the editor and my cinematographer and the actual writer. So it helped a lot. So the construction of Nasir's world and all is a lot of credit to my cinematographer, Soumyananda Sahi, and my editor, Argo Basu.
Wonderful. And Santosh, I'll leave it to you to wrap up. And
yeah, no, this is fantastic. You made us fall in love with Nasir, and congratulations. That loving feeling in our hearts and the sadness at the end, you really took us on a really emotional ride. And also, just before the end, we were just loving the comments he was writing to his wife, and the tragedy came at the moment when we loved him the most, so it's a well done film in that sense.
Thank you, Santosh. Pleasure. Yeah, it's a very sad reality. I hope this particular reality changes in the country with how Muslims are being perceived and how this communal tension is growing and all of that. But I hope that in the coming years, we won't be able to see such stories, and this will only be a thing of the past. But I'm very glad that with a good crew and with a lot of support from my producers, we were able to make the film. And like you said, for us, just making the film is a fortune. We don't have to make money. I don't know how much money we are going to make from the film, because right until now we have not seen a penny out of the film. And even big platforms, they might not want to show the film and all that. So, but still, being able to tell the story itself, I consider that as a fortune. And thank you guys for showing the film, to the US audience, to audience in Cincinnati and all around North America. I hope more people watch it. And thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, both of you. Fabulous job, Santosh, and thank you, Arun, as well. Join us again tomorrow for more films, and I hope you join us too, Arun and Santosh.
Yeah.
Watch some more films with us.
Great.
Yes, sure. I'm going to do that. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone. Yeah.
வாழ்க்கையில் பிடிப்பேதும் இல்லை எனக்கு, இல்லை எந்த புகாரும் கூட. நான் அசடும் அல்ல அதை வெறுக்கும் அளவுக்கு. ஆனால் இன்று இளமையின் அந்தி மாலையில் மௌனத்தின் ஊர்கரையில் நிற்கிறேன் நான். இரக்கமற்ற காலம் பெருக்கெடுத்து ஓடுகிறது, நூற்றாண்டுகளில் சமைந்துவிட.